Is it possible to forgive adultery? I don't think forgive is the right word here. Cheating can be accepted or not accepted. If a person has come to terms with adultery, it does not mean that he has forgiven it adultery. It is impossible to forgive cheating. It will always be present in life. Going on treason, it is necessary to understand if it will be opened, and it is inevitable. To count on forgiveness, it is not necessary. Why don't people, especially women, understand that? A man, if he is a man and not a cocksucker, he will never forgive and put up with it. Living with an unfaithful woman is like smoking someone else's cigarette butts. And the reason for cheating is secondary. Excesses like not loving, not satisfying, not seeing me as a woman does not work here. Not satisfied with life with her husband, get a divorce. A woman who cheats on her husband is in a constant state of love, which she mistakenly takes. For love, having children, a long marriage does not matter to her, especially if the lover is younger. Eventually, her husband finds out and she leaves with her head held high for her lover, destroying everything she has created for so long. But lover is not enough as a rule for a long time. After some time, a belated sobering up comes, tears and lamentation begin, visits to her ex-husband. Suddenly, she remembers that she has children. They too are drawn into the vortex. Any means are good, from blackmail to tantrums. But all that is left of the once happy family is in ashes, and there is no turning back. My mother left my father and me when I was 2.5 years old. My father never married again and gave all his love to me. His sister, Antiola, helped him raise me. Every summer, I visited her at the dacha and played with her children Nina and Vardik. When I was 17, my father died suddenly. I was left alone. After leaving school, I went to artillery school. The everyday life of a cadet began. I didn't know where my mother was, what she was doing, and frankly, I wasn't particularly interested. I knew she was gone and could not be. I had no feelings for her. I found her picture in an album once, but my father took it away and there was nothing else in the house that reminded me of her. After graduating, I served in the army for a while and then was sent as into an African country. My job was to train their troops in artillery. I was an instructor in a mortar battery. I had an interpreter with me as I did not know the local language. So I served for 1.5 years. Once on my way back from the exercise, I broke the main rule not to drink water from local springs. But it was hot and I couldn't help myself. As a result, I got hepatitis and was sent back to the home country for treatment. I was hospitalized for about 2 months. I did not waste any time and met Vera, a pretty nurse, and we struck up a love affair. I was not sophisticated in dealing with girls. It seemed to me that the world had come to an end with Vera, so by the time I was discharged from the hospital we got married. I was sent to serve in the Baltic. Vera came with me. We soon had a son, Yager. I wanted more children, but Vera was categorically against it, saying that she was still young and wanted to live for herself. That was the first alarm bell, but I didn't pay attention to it at the time. The service was dragging on. Long business trips to hotspots began. I spent less and less time with my family. In the army, nobody cares about your problems. The main thing is service from dawn till dusk. There are, however, 2 days off, one in summer and one in winter. The rest is service. I really missed my son and my wife. When I was at home, I tried to spend time with them as much as possible. But at some point, I began to notice that my attention was at Vera. I got the impression that she was not happy to see me and my son became distant from me. One day, I was sent on a business trip abroad. I thought it would last a month, but it turned out to be half a year. During this time, I have tried several times to no avail. Vera answered me only once. The letter had mundane phrases, and I had the impression that she wrote it more out of obligation than out of love. I received no more letters from her. Everything comes to an end at some point. My business trip was also over. I arrived at my unit, turned in my duties at headquarters and went home. Vera was not at home. Yega was playing in the yard under the supervision of a neighbor. Seeing me, she was embarrassed and said that Vera went to the store asking her to look after Yega. It seemed that she was not telling me something. Okay. I took my son by the hand and we went home. On the way Igor was saying something. He was telling me how he goes to kindergarten, what friends he has there, and that when mom is busy, his dad takes him from kindergarten. Daddy. I stopped involuntarily. Daddy cost you? He loves me and promised to give me a big red car. Eagle looked at me and suddenly asked, Uncle, how long will you stay with us? I'm not an uncle. I'm your daddy. My throat was dry. No. My dad is Costa. Mom says that we'll go far, far away with him soon. Yega was smiling happily. It's just that when you come, my dad leaves home. You stay with us, but not for long because I miss my dad. I was surprised to find myself in control. I should have held in despair, rushed to find Vera, demanded that she explain something. But my heart just pounded a little faster than usual. We came home. I gave Eagle the presents he had brought, and I went into the bathroom myself. Through the noise of the water, I heard the front door slam. Vera must have come running. I took my time. I slowly wiped myself with my towel, which I took out of my duffel bag. At some point, I felt disgusted to touch any of the things in this apartment. I got dressed and went out. Vera was bustling about in the kitchen. Welcome home, Slava. She exclaimed, imitated joy on her face and tried to kiss my cheek. Now I will feed you. I pulled away. Don't, Vera. Sit down and let's talk. A chill poured inside me, drowning out the rage that had erupted. I felt like I was seeing myself from the outside. That this was happening to someone else, not to me. Vera must have sensed something and slowly lowered herself onto the stall. How long have you been in touch with Daddy Costa? And when do you go far, far away? My face turned into a mask. Vera had never seen me like that. She suddenly cringed and lowered her head, trying not to look at me. How do you? She whispered. How do I know? I tried to grin, but I couldn't. My lips felt like they were frozen to my teeth. It doesn't matter anymore. How long have you been in love? Almost a year. She spoke very softly. I don't know how it happened. I wanted to leave him, but it's stronger than me. He made me feel like a woman. A woman I love. You're never home. She turned to shouting. Stop it, Vera. I got up. You're an adult and you've made your choice. I'll file for divorce myself. I'll visit Eagle when I can and take into account that the apartment is official. Find your own place. I threw my knapsack on my shoulder, took my cap off the coat rack, and went to the front door. You won't even ask who he is? Vera sobbed. I shrugged silently, opened the door and went out. No emotion. Only the cold inside. Fate plays with our fates. First, my mother left me, and now my wife cheated on me. She even tried to take my son away from me. Daddy Costa. I shook my head to drive away the intrusive thoughts. Well, time would tell what would happen next. At the trial, my wife diligently poured slurry on me, accusing me of all the mortal sins. Especially poignant was the accusation of adultery. They said that I did not come home for so long because I had taken a mistress all the time we were together. I beat her and humiliated her. This was confirmed by the neighbor, but she tried not to look at me all the time, carefully hiding her gaze. I even looked at my wife with respect. She was going from guilty of divorce to a victim of domestic violence. I neither objected nor argued. A mistress is a mistress. The elderly judge looks empathetically at Vera. Gender solidarity. All men are bastards, and we women are such fools. Bottom line, divorce, alimony. No coming near my son without his mother's permission. During the trial, Daddy Costa never showed up. When we were leaving the courthouse, I asked Vera, "Aren't you ashamed?" I never heard the answer. Of course. I lived in the officer's dormitory for some time. She wouldn't let me near my son, so I watched him from afar. I saw Daddy Costa too. He was young with a cheeky face that showed perpetual contempt and squeamishness. Women, where are your eyes and brains? Well, it's clear where. It was very hard to catch a glimpse of sympathetic colleagues, but talk about my divorce, number one started. A month went by and in my dormitory was Vera. Her determination and insolence were noticeably diminished. "May I pass?" She hesitantly froze on the threshold. "Come in," I answered in one word. I did not want to waste my energy and emotions on communicating with this woman. Your son would soon have nowhere to live. With a challenge she began, we were offered to vacate the official apartment. In exchange, they offered a shack on the outskirts of the city. I kept silent. I had nothing to say to her, especially I had warned her about it. You have an apartment in your own city. Sell it, help your child. And at the same time, and you're a lover, I smiled. I'm sorry, honey, but you knew what you were getting into. And I could use the apartment myself. What a scoundrel you are disowning your own son. She wiped away her tears. Costa was right. I got up. Vera, I'll give you a second to leave and try not to see me again. She grabbed her bag and ran out the door. 2 more weeks passed. I was coming back from the service. And at the watch house, I saw Vera holding Yeager's hand. Would you mind watching Yeager? Costa and I are leaving here. We'll settle in a new place and I'll take him away at once. She babbled in a hasty voice and turned her eyes away. What the lover of another man's child is a burden. I hugged my son. She remained silent. In a month, I was transferred to the south, and life became a whirlwind. Little by little I began to thaw. The main thing was that Yeager was with me. He grew up and matured. At first, he asked where Mom was, then he stopped as if he understood everything. Vera never came or tried to contact me, though I left my address at the hostel just in case. It was hard. I even wanted to get married so that my son would have some kind of mother. But I quickly realized that no woman wants another man's child. It is believed that the man has an obligation to love the adopted son or daughter, but a woman doesn't owe anyone anything. So I lived alone. That is how 15 years passed. A lot had changed. Yeager was already studying at the military academy, and I returned to my native town. A military school was opened here, and I was appointed its commander. I never thought that I would try on pants with general stripes. Pants are pants, but there was a lot of work to be done. In the fall, classes began. Things got a little easier. I had some free time, then one evening, I found I was out of bread. It was no great tragedy, but I couldn't eat dinner without bread. I was too lazy to get dressed, so I went to the nearest supermarket as I was wearing homemade sweatpants and a sweatshirt. Near the cash register, I saw a slim young woman. It was Vera. But what is she doing in my town? It was as if she felt my gaze and looked around. Glory. She looked at me from head to toe. I see that life is not very good. Why would you say that? I smiled. Come on. I see it. Faith looked at me point blank, and it was obvious that she was glad I was not successful in her opinion, the life. It's good at least you're not homeless. She adjusted her coat and shook her hair playfully. Apparently, her life was going well. I could see she was waiting to be questioned, but I didn't say anything. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. How is Yeager? I hope he's doing well. Her eyes turned guilty for a moment. He's doing well. He's graduating from the academy in 2 years. Vera wanted to ask something else, but a young girl came up to us. Mother? Who is this? She gave me a scornful look and turned to Vera. Vera took her under her arm, so an old acquaintance worked together. She looked at me. Do you have a business card? Yeah. Where from? Take mine. If you're desperate, I have a bowl of soup for you. Vera gracefully turned and with her daughter's hand silently moved to the exit. I spent her sight do not read through the card in a trash and went to pick myself a bread for dinner. More time passed. I was already a lieutenant general when fate brought me back together with Vera. I was flying to Yega's graduation and after passing the pre-flight formalities, I was relieved to take my seat on the plane. My neighbor was a young woman who looked at me with interest. But what was my surprise when across the aisle I saw Vera in the company of an elegant lady and a gray-haired colonel. I could see from a mile away that the colonel was bursting with self-importance, though, to all appearances, he had never gone beyond the military district. Vera saw me, and I could see that she did not know how to behave with me. Finally, she made up her mind and introduced me to her friends as a former colleague. Are you also in the military? The colonel became animated. Where did you serve? What rank? Vera tried to seize the initiative. In many places, yes, Slava, and the rank major. The colonel smiled indulgently. Yes. Not everybody has a career. He looked at his companion triumphantly. Alas, not a major, but a lieutenant. I tried to put on a sad expression on my face. My neighbor smiled. So young and already a lieutenant. She made no secret of her disappointment. Yes. I hadn't lived up to her expectations. Appearances can be deceiving. The colonel lost interest in me and began to concentrate on his newspaper. The plane landed safely. The passengers started to descend to the concrete ground to get to the bus. Comrade Lieutenant General. I turned around. The fitted colonel put his hand to the visor of his cap. A car was waiting for you. He pointed to a black representative car with military numbers waiting nearby. I turned to Vera and her companions. The colonel's jaw dropped, and the two ladies went into a stupor. Do you want a lift? Suit yourself. I sat down in the back seat. The colonel shut the door, sat down next. To the driver, and the car drove off to the exit of the terminal. After passing the graduates with a solemn march, I went to my son to congratulate him on his lieutenant rank and graduation from the academy. Yega was talking to some woman. When he saw me, he smiled and we embraced. The woman turned around and looked at me. Vera? My general's uniform did not tie in with the wrinkled sweatpants in the supermarket 2 years ago. She tried to pull herself together. Here I came to congratulate Yega. You do not mind? You told me that he finishes the academy. Igor looked at me perplexed. Yes, son. That's your mother. I tried to speak calmly. I don't have a mother, and the one I had a long time ago died. Let's go. Daddy, I have to pick up my orders from the military unit. When we got into the car, I saw Vera standing motionless, with her hands pressed to her chest, looking in our direction without looking away. Dear listeners, please like